Okej, zamierzam kupić Legion Samobójców, tą nową grę, która wyjdzie już niebawem. I pomyślałem, że sobie obejrzymy właśnie przemyślenia Luka na ten temat. On już grał w tę grę, więc będzie wiedział więcej. Zapraszam.
Update for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League coming from Rocksteady. Specifically, they are lifting the part of the NDA from the alpha playtest back in November, saying that you can't talk about it. So this means
Czyli widzicie, było NDA, że nie można było mówić i teraz już można.
now that anyone who played it is allowed to talk about it, including me.
Ten to
Now
masz
listen, I've been
szczęście,
very
też
coy
bym
about
chciał
this for a
sprawdzić.
while because under an NDA you can't acknowledge that you played it, you can't disclose anything about it, you can't share what you thought, your impressions. You can't even be like, "Ooh, I played it and now I pre-ordered it." Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. You can't do any of that. So I had to stay very tight-lipped and just continue as normal. But now that they've lifted this and now that we're allowed to discuss it, I want to offer my thoughts. Since I have
Dawaj, bo
played
jestem
Suicide
ciekaw
Squad
twojego
Kill the Justice
przemyślenia.
League
Dużo ludzi
for
w ogóle może nie hejtuje, ale raczej negatywnie podchodzi do tej gry, do tej produkcji. No zobaczymy.
however many hours it was, and I have some thoughts. First things first, and a little bit of housekeeping, they still have a restriction on gameplay, meaning that we cannot show any footage or anything that we might have captured during the event. Not that you could have, they had everything watermarked like crazy, so you couldn't even really use anything if you did capture it, but still. As a result, I can't show you any footage backing up any points that I'm trying to make. So I guess you're gonna have to trust me, bruh. But because I don't want this video to just be my face, we're gonna show some footage and B-roll and stuff of gameplay that they've previously released through official channels. So none of the footage you're gonna see in this video was captured by me. It's official footage that they have put out, just to be completely clear. Now, I went through the playtest with a few friends. The first thing you did when you booted up the game was calibrate the graphics and target frame rates, stuff like that, and then also select the difficulty you wanted to go through the game on, at least starting. This could be changed later though. The three options were walk in the park, best pay attention, and sweating bullets, which offered, as you increase the difficulty, varying levels of rewards, whether that's higher XP or improved resource drops. After this, we went into a little tutorial section where we got to learn how to play with
Okej, a czy tu jest jakaś, nie wiem, dla pojedynczego gracza fabuła, czy coś takiego? Czy to jest gra, w której po prostu, nie wiem, gramy ze znajomymi i lutujemy?
One of the members of the Suicide Squad. This means we got acclimated with all of the characters, whether we wanted to play Deadshot, Harley Quinn, King Shark, or Boomerang. We
Czy możemy zmieniać w locie
These tutorials were
postacie?
extremely simple and basically took us through a couple of small arenas, teaching us how to play, how to move, swing, and navigate the maps. This took about 20 to 25 minutes to get through all of the little tutorials, and then we go into a team-based tutorial, which is a bigger combat encounter where you select which one of the characters you want to start playing with and specializing in. I started specialized with King Shark because he had a really cool jump mechanic for movement and his minigun seemed like it could be fun. One of the first notes that I took was that I felt the UI was a little bit busy, especially once you started dealing with multiple objectives or a swath of enemies on screen. It started to get a little bit overwhelming. Thankfully, this can be customized in the menu, and if you want to turn certain things off, you can, but often with UI, the reason it's on screen in the first place is because the developers intend for you to see that information. It's the same thing with an open world game if they give you a mini-map and they've designed quest encounters and objectives around the player having that mini-map available to them. It allows them to have busier city streets and more complicated layouts of levels because they know that you can always fall back on that mini-map. Turning it off.
To zawsze, powiem wam szczerze, że zawsze mnie przytłaczało, jak jest dużo się dzieje i pełno macie tutaj na ekranie tych różnych informacji, to dla mnie to już nie ogarniałem. Za stary chyba
but it
jestem.
definitely will harm your overall experience while exploring since they designed it assuming you would have it enabled. And the same thing is true here. You can turn off certain UI elements, but the developers put those on screen by default because they felt that information was necessary. So all of that to say, it's not as easy as just turning off the UI to fix this problem. After this tutorial combat encounter is over, we load into the main menu of the game where we can matchmake with our friends and head into the story. It's also at this point that you can
czyli
go
my możemy robić tę, historię przechodzić fabułę z innymi znajomymi.
through different looks for your characters, equipping different skins or loadouts, and you can
Okay,
also tweak
not
weapon
bad.
profiles and loadouts and things like that. However, at this point in the game, at the very beginning, there isn't anything to customize. I will also say that they did not have the Battle Pass tab enabled, nor did they have the store enabled, meaning that you couldn't peruse any of this, and so if you're wondering what that looks like or how it might be laid out, I honestly don't know. It was not enabled. After this, a series of cutscenes play, establishing the basic premise of the game. There's some pretty funny dialogue and banter back and forth between the characters, and it really shows that this is where Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to excel within the story. Harley Quinn is especially a standout and had me chuckling.
No właśnie, ja może narażę się osobom niektórym, ale ja bym chciał zagrać tę grę dla samej historii, fabuły. No bo jakby DC czy Marvel lubię to czytałem za dzieciaka komiksy, jeszcze te stare takie komiksy wypożyczały się z biblioteki. Też nie było mnie stać na zakup, to były dawne czasy, lata 90. Więc no, sentyment, prawda?
Might get old over the course of an entire video game, but at least in these small doses, it's fun and entertaining. We then go through a sequence where the group gets their various movement abilities and items. This is something that was already revealed in official gameplay from Rocksteady themselves, so I won't focus on it too much. But after that, we go and we get to start exploring the open world a little bit more while hunting down the Flash. I feel like this is when we first get to really know how this game works. This gameplay was also revealed, and I can attest that these sequences are what the majority of the game is made up of. Fighting purple and blue enemies, shooting weak points, and bouncing around with your teammates. It's not bad.
Okej, czyli co, będzie się to powtarzać, będą słabe punkty i będziemy jedno i to samo robić? O Jezu.
Just gets really old really quickly. I played through this one time through by myself, and then I also played through it with my friends, and I was kind of done by the time we got finished up with the alpha playtest. I was like, okay, it's just more of the same. And yes, you can like tweak this gun, and yes, you can equip this thing in the skill tree to give your grenades plus like 1.5 times blast power and stuff. But for me personally, it just was not captivating enough to make me want to play this for hundreds and hundreds of hours. I was like, okay, there's only so many purple little dudes I can shoot before it starts to feel like I'm just doing the same thing over.
No właśnie, ta sama rzecz, że robimy to samo w koło. Ojejku, tego się obawiam, no ale dla mnie to ta gra jest po to, żebym poznał fabułę i tyle. I żeby nagrać to też na YouTube,
which is the
nie?
definition of insanity. I will say playing with friends is where the game also excelled. It was clear that that's what the game was designed around. This is certainly possible to play as a single player title, but it has been crafted from the ground up, assuming that most people will go through with friends and with a party they know that have crafted their builds around certain play styles complementing each other. And that made it all the more frustrating when a lot of these missions required us to just bounce around the map, going from one objective to another, multiple kilometers away from each other, racing each other effectively, and inevitably one of us would arrive before the rest, and then you just stand around waiting for the rest of the group to arrive. Or in typical looter shooter fashion, you can stand on the objective marker, and then it'll start a timer, which when it runs out will warp all of the other party members to your location, which basically bypasses the whole point of the game, which is to navigate this open world with cool movement abilities while shooting enemies. There was one mission I did where I arrived at the objective marker well before the rest of the party, playing as Harley Quinn, and I actually had a decent time swinging around trying to survive while the rest of my party made their way over to me. However, again, it was just more of the same. Purple glowing guys with big zits on their
czyli jest
backs
bardzo powtarzalna ta gra, tak? I może się znudzić. No, nie mogli po prostu single playera z tego zrobić i tyle.
And when paired with their brain dead AI, I eventually realized I didn't have to fight them. I could just stand behind a singular column and they couldn't see me, and their hit detection would break, and they just basically forgot about me, like an old school stealth game with terrible AI itself.
Yeah.
And listen, maybe the combat encounters and stuff get really good towards the end of the game. Maybe they start to like really crank it, but these like standard missions in the open world that are just built around fighting waves and waves of enemies and then shooting the big glowing purple thing with a big weak spot, and then tanks come in with big glowing purple weak spots. It's just all over the place,
Wszystko
And all
sprowadza
of the
się do
missions start
purple,
to blend
fioletowego
together.
koloru.
I understand that maybe it gets better and they get tougher as the game goes on, so maybe it doesn't feel that samey. But like again, it's not my fault if the playtest and the first couple of hours of the game are boring and bland and repetitive. It's not my
Jezu,
fault.
ale
That's
jedzie
their
po
fault
tym.
for making it.
Ajajajajaj, no to grubo się zaczyna dziać. Nudna, powtarzalna, nijaka.
That way. And I'm just calling it like it is, which is that as an outside
No, tak czy siak, myślę, że ją kupię, tę grę. Chociaż, wiecie, Rocksteady, Warner Bros. Coś za darmo, jakby gierka była, chętnie przyjmę.
player, this just started to get really
Tylko po to,
samey
żeby
and
gra
old
na YouTubie
in
jest
just a
przejść
matter of
fabułę.
an hour or two. What didn't get old was the section with Batman. This has been hinted at in a couple of videos and trailers. I'm not going to spoil anything too specifically because I'm not
Batman
sure if
wróci?
all of the stuff I went through has actually been revealed publicly, and I don't want to get in trouble. So all I will say is that these sections with members of the Justice League are where the game really, really excels. Truly, this was where the game was at its absolute best. However, looking at my notes from the time that this sequence started to the time it ended was less than 7 minutes. And this is where it's just going to be a matter for you to ask yourself, like, is 7 minutes of really cool narrative linear content worth 2 hours of grind and repetitive fighting through waves of purple enemies? For some players, I'm sure it will be. For others, it's just not. And that's just going to be up to you. One of the other things that was actively annoying me and my friends that I took multiple notes on were the constant interruptions in pace for dialogue and banter. Initially, I thought the interplay between the members of the Suicide Squad was really good and catchy, and it didn't get old at all. However, again, after just about an hour and a half or 2 hours of gameplay, I realized that there really wasn't that much here, and a lot of the jokes and tropes were getting old already. Boomerang steadily became more and more annoying, almost like he was trying to speedrun the world's most annoying companion in a video game. Deadshot's brooding nature is at least a little more nuanced and interesting, but it also makes him the actual killjoy of the group. Harley Quinn is silly and outrageous, and King Shark is basically this game's version of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. In small, short sequences, this isn't that bad. However, there were multiple occasions when we were engaging in gameplay and combat and actually having a pretty good time with each other as friends playing this co-op game. But then it would all stop, not for an interesting cutscene or dynamic sequence of cool cinematic stuff going on, but rather for the characters to just stand still in a singular circle on an objective marker waiting for dialogue to play out, and then once it completes, we can continue moving. It's that stereotypical thing of all of the characters in a party.
Kurka, samo to, wiecie, no on tutaj strasznie jedzie, może nie aż tak jedzie, ale dużo jest krytycznych i cennych uwag, dlatego lubię to oglądać tę osobę, bo mówi to, co myśli, szczerze. Natomiast no, też ten świat tutaj można będzie fajnie eksplorować, nie?
Playing a looter shooter or something like that, standing around, unable to run or even jog, but rather having to slowly walk while dialogue plays out as the
Serio? Nie będziemy mogli biec, tylko będziemy chodzić powoli, jak się linia dialogowa
game
włącza?
loads in the next sequence. It's really annoying and it actively
No,
pissed us off
rzeczywiście.
because we
To
would be
będzie
really into a
wkurzające.
combat encounter, really into something going on, and then it just stops dead in its tracks so that they can play out some audio files so that we get some piece of exposition that could have been communicated in a better way. And this is the thing that I think frustrated me and my friends the most, was simply that it felt as though the game didn't pace itself very well. It seemed like there were certain sequences where the game really started to get going, like the aforementioned Batman sequence, and then other sections of the game just came to an absolute crawl, and then others stretched on for far too long. It's extremely unlike Rocksteady, who previously have been the masters of pacing within their games. They've historically been really, really good at this, so it was very strange to see them struggle
Może dlatego, że jakoś, nie wiem, tam u góry ich powstrzymywali, nie? Macie zrobić taką grę i tyle. Tempo nie jest ważne.
with it here. Maybe it is just the alpha test and maybe things weren't working properly. Maybe dialogue wasn't triggering the way it was supposed to. But again, that's not my fault. All I
No ale to testy były, więc może się jeszcze coś pozmieniać,
can do
nie?
is report the game as it appeared to me. And that's it. Like I can't speculate on, well, maybe it's going to be better at launch. All I can go with is what I saw and what I played. What I saw and played was a game that seemed decently fun in small doses, but a game that I was already getting bored with after just 2 or 3 hours of gameplay. And that's a problem. Again, this is a
jest
live
duży
service
problem.
game that they're hoping players will engage with for thousands of hours. They have at least a year of support planned for this game. They want you to buy it and play it through to when GTA 6 launches.
Oj, niedobrze się tu dzieje. Wątpię, słuchajcie, że no, może się mylę, ale będzie naprawdę bardzo trudno, żeby utrzymać uwagę ludzi do tego czasu, nie? Rok. Oj, no zobaczymy, co będzie za rok. Wrócimy do tego filmu.
Like that's their goal. They want this to be a live service game all the way through that. And after just one session with my friends, we were all like, well, okay, you want to go play Lethal Company? You want to you want to go play, I don't know, Baldur's Gate or something different? Like Overwatch 2 even? Like, let's go play something like that. And that is the worst thing that you could say about a live service game, is that after you play it for a little bit, you're just ready to move on. And unfortunately, that's where I'm at with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League after playing it myself. I think the story seems interesting. I think the acting and cutscenes are really well done. But honestly, I don't know why you'd pay $70 to get 7 minutes of interesting content.
$70 płacić, żeby 7 minut interesującej zawartości dostać. No to rzeczywiście. Może jakby ta gra była o połowę tańsza.
And then 2 hours of bloat. And then you got to sift through all that bloat to get to the good stuff. When you could just watch like a cinematic version of the game, just with all the cutscenes cut together into like a game movie. You could just do that for free on YouTube. Like it.
Aha. To do mnie, bo mam plan coś takiego zrobić, także możecie obejrzeć. Jak ja się męczę w tej grze, robię zlepek cutscenek i macie cały filmik, nie musicie za darmo, tylko reklamy obejrzyjcie.
Just doesn't really make sense to me why you'd spend all this money and waste all this time grinding to get a story you can engage with and absorb in other ways. Who knows? Maybe the game when it launches ends up being really, really awesome. And maybe this is just a game that shows really poorly. Maybe it's a game that just during preview events and alpha tests, it just doesn't win over skeptical people or people that are not super into this type of game already. But who knows? Time will tell. We will see when the reviews drop. We will check it out. But I'm happy to report I did play the game, and I also found it quite wanting. But with all that said, if you want to hear my extended thoughts, come over to Luke Stevens Live.
Nieźle, moi drodzy. No zobaczymy. Tak jak mówię, ja naprawdę chciałbym kupić tę grę i przetestować. Mam świadomość tego, co może mnie spotkać teraz już tym bardziej. Natomiast i tak chciałbym to zrobić, żeby zrobić walkthrough i rzeczywiście zrobić te fabuły z tych scenek, tak? Żebyście wy nie musieli kupować też. Nie no, żartuję. Kto będzie chciał, to i tak kupi.